of the Senate. I'm Simone Absalom Gale, and I'll provide a brief outline of what's expected to take place during the sitting. But before we begin, did you know that a motion means a proposal made by a senator that the Senate or a committee thereof do something, order something to be done, or express an opinion concerning some matter? On the agenda for this sitting, Minister of Industry, Investment and Commerce, Senator Auburn Hill, is to continue the debate on the state of the nation. The debate gives cabinet ministers in the Senate an opportunity to address their portfolio responsibilities while highlighting government policies and programs. All senators are allowed to contribute to the State of the Nation debate. Senators choose the topics on which they speak and are not constrained to a sector, as is the sectoral debates in the House of Representatives. And that's what's on the agenda. It should be noted, though, that elements of the day's agenda can be changed or moved. But before we go, here are a few things you should bear in mind if you plan to attend a session at Gordon House. No visitor shall create any act of disorder within the precincts of the House. No visitor shall be admitted to the House without first obtaining an admission card. Visitors who remain within the precincts of the House during a suspension of the session are asked to keep silent. No photography, videography, or sketching of the proceedings is allowed, unless so authorized by the presiding officer. And there should be no smoking inside the Parliamentary building. Here are some more interesting facts about the Houses of Parliament. Like we noted in the beginning, according to the standing orders, a motion means a proposal made by a senator that the Senate or a committee thereof do something, order something to be done, or express an opinion. In a sense, a motion is any proposal made by a senator for the purpose of prompting a decision of the House. All decisions of the Senate begin as a motion, and it's moved by a senator. The first step is usually for a senator to give notice of his or her intention to move a motion. Here are a few more points about a motion. A mover is entitled to 45 minutes for his or her opening speech. The Senate may at any time extend the time limited by this order. No member may speak on any question after it has been fully put to the vote by the President or Chairman, and the mover of a motion may reply after all the other members present have addressed the House. Let's talk about the Cabinet. The Cabinet initiates government policies and programs and is responsible for the general direction and control of the government. The Cabinet must consist of the Prime Minister and not less than 11 other ministers. No upper limit is specified. No more than 4 ministers must be appointed from the Senate, and they may have portfolio responsibilities. The Cabinet ministers are appointed from the House of Representatives. Cabinet ministers may be assisted by ministers of state or parliamentary secretaries. Each minister conducts the ordinary business of his ministry without referring to any other minister. However, important matters, especially those which may become the subject of discussion in Parliament, are brought before the Cabinet for discussion and decision. Now over to the proceedings.
14/2022. The annual report on audited financial statement for the Jamaica Urban Transit Company Limited for the financial year 2017-2018, and the annual report on audited financial statements for the Toll Authority for the financial year 2020-2021.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Bills brought from the Honourable House of Representatives, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally, questions and answers to questions, motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice, motions relating to the sitting of the Senate, motions for leave to introduce bills, the presentation of bills without the leave of the Senate first obtained, public business. Madam Minister.
Good morning, Mr. President. Mr. President, today it is our intention to continue with this debate, and in more particularly for Honourable Senator the Honourable Orvin Hill to make his presentation today.
Madam, before you sit, will you just remind me as to when it is intended to complete this State of the Nation process?
Intended, Mr. President, that Senator Campbell Rodriguez will close on the 4th Friday of November.
4th Friday of November.
Yes.
Senator. Members, good morning. Again, Senator Hill, you are recognized for your presentation this morning.
Thank you, Marshall. Right, we seem to be fixed. Thank you very much, Marshall. Mr. President, it is with great pleasure that I rise again in this noble Senate to present another State of the Nation address. I'm eternally grateful to the Almighty Father and Savior, because only His grace alone could I, by faith alone, be numbered among the blessed children that He has, and to be present here today. I'm very grateful to my dear wife Tamara and our children and family for the support they have given me over the years and the chance to serve because of that support. The Most Honourable Prime Minister Andrew Holness gets my very special thanks for giving me the double privilege of the appointment as a senator and to his cabinet to serve the people of Jamaica. Very special thanks to Permanent Secretary, and I glimpsed up and I see her here. Everyone should know that the Permanent Secretary is the boss in the ministry. She can tell the minister what to do. The minister can't tell her. The minister can't tell her what to do, that she's here. I'm very pleased to see you, PS, and please give her a round of applause. And it's PS Sansia Bennett Templar. She and her staff, and the President is inviting you, Madam PS, to sit in the belly of the Senate, and we'll be very happy to have you down here. The well of the Senate, the belly is somewhere else. But she and the staff at the ministry, and especially her expert researchers, have been very helpful to me. My own staff in my office, represented by Cadian Chris, and Cadian is up here. I see her up there. So, Mr. President, I'm very grateful to them, but also especially to Mrs. Valerie Curtis and her team in the Parliament here for the work that they do. Won't name them all, but what they do as well, Mr. President, is that when my colleagues on the other side, completely without any malice, would seek to steer me on the wrong path, the staff keep me straight, and I really appreciate that. So give them a round of applause. And of course, Mr. President, my colleagues on this side and across the aisle, I've had good relations with you all. I am privileged to be serving in here, and I'm happy to be here today to be presenting my State of the Nation submission. So, Mr. President, what is the state of the nation? That has to be managed through a devastating worldwide pandemic unlike any we've experienced in over 100 years. This thing isn't working, I don't think. Mr. President, the Andrew Holness administration has been and is in constant state of looking after the nation, especially the needy in our country. The latest help package is for our hard-working transportation operators. It's the 25,000. Last month we gave it 25,000 PPV grant, which is a cash pickup, which was accessible at WeCare .gov.jm. Mr. President, there was a further extra path payment of $1.1 billion for the short period of April to June in 2021. Also, Mr. President, path beneficiaries were allocated a total of $1.3 billion in 21-22, which was distributed by the Ministry of Labour and Social Services in grants of $10,000 to individual recipients. Mr. President, we didn't stop there. We recognize the tremendous financial pressure parents face in getting their children back to school during the pandemic, and so the Holiness Administration allocated another $1.8 billion to 203,500 beneficiaries, whereby primary and secondary school students received grants of 8,500, while a grant of 5,000 was given to every student at the early childhood level who were on the PATH student or poor relief program. Another $1.8 billion given out to people. The Holiness Administration implemented in fiscal 2021 during the first months of the onset of the pandemic, when nobody knows what was happening. We didn't know what was going on. That we allocated a $14 billion tax relief to all Jamaicans in the form of a significant reduction of GCT from 16.5% to the more agreeable 15%. This, Mr. President, is the tax relief that keeps on giving. It doesn't go away. And that was $14 billion worth that year. Let's not forget that all that started because the government believes that whenever possible, not all the time, but whenever possible, we must be able to give back to Jamaicans, let them keep their own money, because they know how to spend it better than most in the government. So it all started, Senator Webby, with 1.5 in 2016. Let's not forget it. Mr. President, I got the list, and I looked at what we have given in the almost 3 years, more than 2 years now, back to our Jamaican people as assistance, and this government has given 24 different assistance packages during that period of time for various hundreds of millions of dollars and billions of dollars in some cases. This is an amazingly a great arrangement by a government who cares. Anyone who doubts that the Andrew Holness administration has managed this economy well to recover, especially during the pandemic, can have their doubts relieved by the 8.7% economic growth that was recorded in fiscal 2021. If doubts still linger, it's fiscal 2021-22. If doubts still linger, check out the first quarter of this fiscal year, when our economy grew by 5.7% compared to the same quarter in fiscal 2021-22. Mr. President, we have implemented this huge amount of additional unbudgeted pandemic-induced spending, additional billions of dollars, without my colleagues raising taxes or borrowing any extra money to do it. That is good economic management in a very difficult time. Indeed, Mr. President, you don't even talk, the currency has gone up, you should check the numbers. Indeed, Mr. President, we have not raised taxes. We have not raised taxes in 7 years. In 7 years. No new taxes in 7 years. And not even during the 3-year period of the pandemic. No new taxes. You can't see that for 7 years. Go look back and check. This is what we do. So you can hear very well. Good. Even the most grudgeful, Mr. President, or bad-minded observers will have to give the Andrew Holness administration much more than a little credit for navigating Jamaica so carefully through the COVID-19 pandemic. That is the truth. This, Mr. President, is a caring administration. Mr. President, without question, Andrew Holness is the carer-in-chief. Give him his credit. But you know, Mr. Chairman, I have the privilege of sitting as Mr. President, I have the privilege of sitting as the chairman of the Infrastructure Committee of Cabinet. We approve amounts of money that are over $60 million in contract. We recommend to Cabinet to approve it. The Infrastructure Committee reviews all that. It's a very robust committee. The Honourable Audrey Swell, PS of OPM and MJEC, is there. Mr. Bennett, Andre Bennett from Ministry of Finance, Mr. Varden Downer from NWA, Ministers Everett Warmington, McKenzie, Favour Williams, Colonel Charles Jr., Matthew Samoud, and Robert Morgan are all on this committee. And so what did we do since 2020? Just not the budgets of the ministry now, just the contracts that we approve that people can get to fix the ministries or roads or whatever they do. $469.75 million and US $430,000 have been approved to the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. Another $239 million for contracts for the Ministry of Education and Youth. That's different from the $119.2 billion that's in their budget. That's just a contract that comes to Cabinet for approval. $406.27 million and $3.08 million, $406.27 million Jamaican dollars, and $3.08 million for the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. $352 million for the Ministry of Health and Wellness. $403.56. There's a reason I'm telling you this, because I'm going to tell you where the money is coming from. The Ministry of Labour and Social Security. $843.77 million and $18.1 million for the Ministry of National Security. $307.39 million and $8.97 million US dollars for the Ministry of Science, Energy and Technology, and $251.55 million for the Ministry of Transport and Mining. That total amount, in both currencies, Mr. President, recommended by the Infrastructure Committee to Cabinet for its approval, is approximately $8.8 billion in that period of time in the pandemic. Now, what that means is tens of thousands of jobs for Jamaicans in an economy at a time when the pandemic was raging and many people initially lost their jobs. We were creating jobs for people to work in the pandemic. Spending on roads, maintain technical machines, supply of installation of information systems, buy vehicles, fix air conditioners, and a lot more. Not only does the administration spend a lot of money to better the infrastructure and services in our country, but, Mr. President, in a large way, because I sit on this committee where many ministries are represented, we cooperated well across ministries to get it done. So could we do better? Do we want to get it done faster? Absolutely. But there is substantial cooperation across the lines of government to get it done. Now, Mr. President, before I tell you about what I'm going to say next, I take a sip, because I'm going to tell you about how Jamaica is seen through this period of difficulty. So amazing has Jamaica's fiscal performance been that in a recent publication by an international cable news service and a big American bank, it found that among emerging markets nations, Jamaica is rated the highest among the Caribbean partners in terms of current additional risk premium the market would seek to attach for holding different countries' bonds. Quite exceptionally, Mr. President, Jamaica comparative bonds are rated higher than some investment-grade bonds. I'll give you an example. There are 39 countries in this emerging market chart. There are 9 countries ahead of Jamaica in this risk assessment of risk in this period. 4 of them are oil-producing countries from the Arabian Gulf. and only Israel, South Korea, China, Philippines, and Indonesia are ahead of us. None from the Caribbean, none from Latin America. No matter what you call them, no matter how them tell you them good, Jamaica is ahead of all of them, and our risk premium for this area is 121 basis points. Let me tell you what that means. That's 1.21, that premium that they would ask. When you look at, I'm going to give a name. When you look at, oh boy, I better not, but big name we're all friends. So big name in South America, big name in Asia, big name in Europe. They have, remember now, ours is 121 basis point. 100 basis point make 1%. So we have 121. This name, which is from a big country in South America, has 3,313 basis points. Divide that by 100 and you can see that they are 33%, we're 1 point something. So Jamaica is standing well. All through this, the Wholeness Administration, with those ministries working together, spending money but not borrowing and taxing people more, have done well, and the international community said Jamaica stands tall in the Caribbean and Latin America. So where does that money that the Minister of Finance, Minister of Health, Minister of Youth, Minister of everybody, including the Minister of Industry, Investment and Commerce, me in there too, where the money comes from? There are not a lot of places. The first one I want to give credit to is to the diaspora, and for the work that Ministers Kamina Johnson-Smith and Leslie Campbell do to keep that diaspora group together in various meetings and visits and so on. So we know that about $2 billion of that comes to Jamaica, that helps in running our country, comes from the diaspora, and I want to recognize them for that work and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for that work. We get grants from some of our multilateral partners, some of them extremely gracious to us. Won't pick them out so that people don't get jealous, but they give us. But where does the real bulk of the money come from? Let me tell you where it comes from. It comes from businesses and business employers. Businesses like what? Tourism. I'm going to tell you more about that in a minute. Business like BPO. You know, the BPO business never fell much in the pandemic. Business like manufacturing and services that we're doing in Jamaica. That's where it comes from. So you say it comes from taxes? No, it comes from businesses and their employees who pay taxes. Because even me, a government employee, the money that the government pays me comes from taxes paid by businesses and their employees and collected so well by the Minister of Finance. So let us understand that's where the business comes from. Them the workers, them the work for business. So anyway, we also get some money in case
Senator Brown, don't start, man, please.
Thank you. In case you tell me that we get some money from borrowings, well, we haven't borrowed any for a long time. For a very long time, we haven't borrowed. But if we were to borrow it, the money to pay them back would come from the same taxes, from businesses like Grace and Jamaica Brothers Group and small businesses who pay their taxes to make sure the government get their money. So understand the role that business has in our economy and the supporting of our government. Sometimes we don't remember that. So business is the key driver in the economic and the main provider of revenues. Minister Dr. Nigel Clark does an outstanding job of spending government revenues in a very prudent and judicious manner. However, the key contributor of those revenues is the various business sectors operating in the economy. Mr. President, just as there is no government money per se, there are no government revenues unless these companies and their employees pay taxes. Businesses are the entities which provide a lot of the cash that Minister Clark and his colleagues, including me, spend through their various ministries. A business and their employees, that money comes from. That money that his ministry and all of us spend, it's business and employees' money that they pay in. As the business minister, as the business ministry, we at the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce seek to remind the nation of the very vital and indispensable position and role our large, medium and small businesses play in the economy and in the proper and regular functioning of funding of the government apparatus in this country. My colleagues, they do reserve a stamping on the desk. Give businesses for the role that they play in our economy and country. And you too over there, Mr. Labour Leader, you can stamp as well. I'm going to pick out Minister Edmund Bartlett. He has led the tourism industry and ministry through the COVID-19 pandemic to quite an outstanding recovery, which will result this year in a projected $5.7 billion in revenues coming into the country. You know, it's not just the revenues. I'm going to give you a little insight because a bird pinched me and tell me, say, the next business confidence and consumer confidence is going to be something spectacular because of the way people see tourism and other areas, BPO and manufacturing have performed, but especially tourism. So look for the report in Tuesday. The global digital services sector, BPO, most people know it as, in this ministry, my ministry, has also performed extremely well during the pandemic. At the end of 2019, we had 43,000 employees. You remember the hiccup that was there with one of these BPOs and the thing spread? Well, we instituted work from home. From then on, the employment kept rising. We're now at about 55,000 employees among 75 companies in the BPO sector and growing. That's where growth is, and that's where taxes come from. Maybe it's time that our national figures show export services like tourism and BPO as exports. But that's for another discussion. Mr. President, without well-run, innovative, investor-supported and entrepreneurial businesses, the government would have an extremely difficult time functioning as well as it does today, and it functions well today, given the challenges that we have to face on a day-to-day basis. The COVID-19 pandemic has thrown up some tragic sovereign cases around the world, from Europe to Asia, where businesses have been unable to function well, and we see the downfall of governments as a result of those business upheavals and failures. Not in Jamaica. Not in the Andrew Holness cabinet. Mr. President, as the business ministry, we will endeavour to upscale the cooperation and collaboration between business-affecting ministries in this administration to facilitate and enable our businesses to perform optimally every single day. I want to stress that, because people complain how you have red tape and all kinds of hurdles that business must go over. Now, if you are so dependent, as I've shown you, I'm going to show you some more numbers that will blow your mind in a minute, I think. If you're so dependent on business, it is all of our jobs. That side, this side, Jamaicans in Morant Bay, Jamaicans in St. Elizabeth, all the Jamaicans in Kingston, every Jamaican in government, all of us must make sure we make it easy for businesses to do business well and fairly. No funny business. But if we're going to do that, then I am willing to make sure the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce lead that action to make sure we collaborate better, because this is where they come. Of course, when they want to deal with tax issues, they know where to go. So, Mr. President, we want to make sure we help them in every way we can. In a similar vein, Mr. President, yes, please, we at the Ministry are working to redirect, in some cases repurpose, our 22 agencies to assist our businesses and firms to grow. Some of them are going to be merged. You'll hear about that in a bit. And to work by international standards. And to export a lot more than we do today. A lot more. We have a kind of Campbell's soup in the names that we have in the agencies, right across government, JAMPRO, that's the World Trade, the Trade Board, JIPO. I want to just pick out JANAC for a minute, because JANAC went with me to Guyana. And since I came to the ministry, I found out what JANAC is. Let me just tell you what it means. The Jamaica National Association of Accrediting Agencies. They do accreditation. Let me tell you how important and how recognized they are. JANAC is one of 4 bodies in the world that have the FDA approval to accredit other agencies in the world. And I think 2 of them, it might be 1, are in the United States. JANAC, there are 11 protocols that the FDA will give you. JANAC has already mastered 10 and working on the 11th. JANAC serves 9 other Caribbean countries, including Guyana, Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, and so on. Very, very, very important agency. I have focused on this, took them with me to Guyana, but not only that, they're members of the International Labour Accreditation Corporation, the Inter-American Accreditation Corporation. When we accredited the rice lab in Guyana, it meant that any rice from Guyana or any lab reaccredit goes into the United States and doesn't have to be checked again by the FDA. You know how fast trade happens that way. So places like JANAC, the Bureau of Standards of Jamaica, very important, and we intend to help to make all of these agencies repurpose the one that we must to make sure they focus on exports, because I'm going to tell you why exports are so important. But right now, Mr. Chairman, for 6 years, our colleague, Senator Don Webby, served as the chairman of JAMPRO. He told us earlier, a few months ago, that this is Grace's 100 years. Grace is expanding all over the place, doing a lot of exports, for which I'm happy. All over the place, Senator Don is exporting. And so I want to say thanks to him for serving so well, giving leadership to JAMPRO, not just the board, but the management as well. And we're sorry to see that he's gone back to Grace, but those who are shareholders in Grace, those who are shareholders in Grace will be happier that he has gone back completely to Grace. Thank you very much, Senator Don Webby, for the work that you've done with JAMPRO. We appreciate it. Mr. President, because businesses are producing the jobs, the goods, the services for the economy, and the taxes that the government needs to support our social and physical infrastructure, it is incumbent on all of us to make sure we support them, as I said, in government and across the country. That means broad and sustained support to facilitate, to enable tourism, global digital services, BPO, manufacturing, construction, agriculture, agro-processing, all of them. Because unless these entities produce, we don't have a country. Or you're going to beg, and that can't work. We might be going into a world where this recession is not a place to go begging. I make an equal pledge as Minister, Mr. President, to ensure that the agencies of this ministry, especially the Consumer Affairs Commission and the Fair Trading Commission, both are to be merged soon, will work to support consumers in their quest and desire and their search for the best products and services at reasonable and competitive prices. So while I am here supporting businesses, and strongly so, and no apology so, I am equally unapologetic about supporting consumers to make sure that they who do not have the power, and the accountants and the lawyers that businesses have and the marketing managers will get a fair share, because the government is going to set a level playing field, and we're committed to that. But, Mr. President, we must export a lot more. I want to share so you can get the emphasis of what I'm talking about and how critical it is. In 2021, we imported $5.975 billion worth of products and services. We exported, listen to the number. The import was $5.975 billion. We exported a mere $1.441 billion. The gap is $4.5 billion. Now, under any calculation, when you have that equation on your table for the money that you spend, where you're creating more of creating less revenues than what you're spending, you're going to end up in trouble. But I tell you how big a trouble we can be in. One import item, fossil fuel, cost us $2 billion about in 2021. Now that dwarfs the mere $1.441 billion that we export. So you can see we're in trouble. That single item dwarfs everything. Now, Mr. President, we need to export a lot more in order to begin to close that deficit. We need to deploy professional perseverance, innovation, entrepreneurship, and a relentless dedication to export what we can today, so we don't have to wait till we invest more. Start today and constantly create new products and services that will make us competitively successful in overseas markets. Mr. President, I can't stress enough how much we have to export more. In this half year to June, the static numbers tell us that we imported $3.758 billion, and we exported a mere $801 million. We can't survive that way. The negative gap is the same that we've gone on. But you know something, Mr. President? In the half year to June, imports were up by 34%, and exports were up by a mere 3.2%. Rather, I mix it up, 2.3%, not even 3.2. The numbers are telling you that we are in a place of great need and distress. So we have to export more. So the mantra is we are going to make sure, and you know, I asked my research team, Carl, Siobhan, Rachel, Kareem, all of them in that research area, the PS's staff, I asked permission to use them. So I said, look, I'm looking at these numbers. So I went back to 2005. And the ratio of imports to exports, the same. Big negative gap. So I went back to 1960. Here's a paper. I have them all here. Right here. Went back from now to 1960.
We'll take the figures after, if you are given an extension by your colleagues.
Mr. President, the Speaker's time having expired, I ask that it be extended to allow him to complete his presentation.
Members would have heard the question. Those in favour? Thank you, Senator Hill.
Thank you very much, Senator Scott Motley. So I went back and I looked at the 60 years. 61 years, because we don't have 62 yet. And you know what I found, Senator Scott Motley? You will not believe this. I look at every single year of all those years since we became independent in 1962, there was one dege year in 1966 when we had a positive trade balance. 1 year. Senator Cabot. No, man, me can say what I want. Me come from St. Elizabeth. Me can adjust it. But do you know what that means in the life of a country? Do you know what that means? Well, so, Mr. President, we need to export a lot more or remain poor. I'm going to say it again. Senator Webby, you often represent the business community here. I have been talking to them up front, JMME, everybody, especially manufacturers. I said, look, if you want Jamaica to be a rich country, we have to export more. But I want to say this very categorically. Jamaica, all Jamaica, we need to export a lot more, not just more, a lot more, or we're going to remain poor. Here are a few more numbers, Mr. President. When you look at Jamaica, we have 3 million people.
Senator, you were saying earlier that there is a possibility that you would put tourist earnings in the category of export. Did you say that?
I said maybe it's time. I didn't say we should.
Well, would that give a false reading as to what the exports are? Would it be something that could be done?
Well, I tell you the rationale behind it, Mr. President. You earn foreign currency when you export. When an American, European, or anybody else comes here with hard currency, they buy taxi fare, they buy restaurants, they buy hotel, bed and space. Those hotels employ people. All that is hard currency coming in. There are some countries who count export tourism income, because it's hard currency income, as an export. So it's a statistical arrangement, which is why I said that's a discussion for another time, and it was just maybe it should be. Yes. But here is the issue. We have 3 million people in Jamaica. Our per capita GDP is under $5,000 US. Under 5,000. So let's look at Israel. Israel has 9.2 million people. Their per capita GDP is about $43,000 US, about the same as Canada with 38 million people. Now, I can assure you that the reason why Israel has 5 times our GDP thereabouts, GDP per capita thereabouts, is not because they're selling to only 9.2 million population in Israel. They sell to the world. You know, you think about it, every one of us in here. When last is to talk about export? You talk about everything else. You talk about British election. You talk about American election. You talk about Caribbean election. You talk about your neighbor's garden. You never talk about export. I want us to talk about export. Everybody who is in business, if you breathe, bottle it and export it. Okay? So we must make sure that we raise that conversation, because all of us are going to remain in a poor country unless we fix this. So, but it's not only Israel. You look at Korea, you look at Germany, China. After Bill Clinton allowed China to join the WTO, China took over as the export country in the world and got rich. No. Look at Singapore. Some people say don't talk about Singapore. I'm going tired to hear me talk about Singapore. Because you know what? Singapore has a little bit more population than us. 5.7 million people. their per capita GDP, depending on the year and the currency exchange, is between 70 to 80,000 US dollars. That's a rich country. They were poorer than us when we became independent and when they became independent. And they've gone. So, you know what? It's not impossible. The richest countries, remember I told you about lots of our oil exporting countries ahead of Jamaica. The richest countries in the world, including Singapore and Luxembourg, are not oil-producing countries, but they're small. So we don't have to fear that we don't have oil. Guyana has oil. Guyana is now going to be our Saudi Arabia, I can tell you that. I just came from there, believe me. And we are right next door to them, and we get on great with them, so we must look at them. So, Mr. President, Jamaica is not going to become a wealthy country selling its goods and services to only 3 million relatively poor people. Me mark that down. Jamaica is not going to get rich selling to 3 million people that are relatively poor. For us Jamaicans to realize the economic independence that we need and deserve, we must make products and craft services that can sell around the world. And we must go and sell it. Mr. President, we must sell a lot more, export exponentially more than we do now. We export a little few things. So to lift ourselves to that place of economic independence and wealth that our people that we have never known since in the 60 years of independence. Why must we export a lot more, Mr. President? To create more and better employment. I don't say just more. I want better as well. Okay? I want to see more and better employment for our people. We must export more to boost business and other taxes to enhance revenues to the government's treasury. The government can't run on air. No, sell more business. When you sell more, so if we are getting 5% of 100 million now, and we're getting 5% of 2,000 million later on, look how much, we don't have to raise taxes. In fact, Senator Webber will tell you we could probably cut taxes if you export a lot more. You see what I mean? So, GOJ set a goal of reducing our debt to GDP to 60%. There are no magic ways to do this. There is a numerator, which is the debt, and there's a denominator, which is the GDP. Only one of two ways to reduce that debt. You either pay off the numerator, reduce your debt, while the GDP stays constant. That's not my real interest. My real interest is go to the denominator, grow the GDP, export a lot more. And when you export and grow the GDP, the debt to GDP number just drops without. And if you pay, so that's the solution. People, yes, we want to get our debt to GDP, but you can't, but a plan to go pay it off so quickly because you can't. You have to because we made a commitment. But the way you're going to do it, remember where the money comes from? Taxes from business and employees. So make sure we grow our business and they export more. So that's the simple way to get down to 60%. My preferred way is to grow GDP so that the debt reduces. So what is the government doing to help businesses, since I want them to do this? Well, we have a World Bank funded program called Trade Facilitation Task Force. It's headed by Mrs. Pat Francis, former head of JAMPRO, a real expert in international trade, and committed to do it, and she does it pro bono. We can't pay her. So the Trade Facilitation Task Force, I just met with them this week, make it very clear that it was sort of when Henry Ford was talking to his car manufacturers and the marketing people. They want to have everything, and he said they can get all colors they want as long as it's black. Trade facilitation can do whatever it wants as long as it increases exports exponentially. They can't do it because businesses must, but I mean facilitate, enable, help, cut out the red tape, show us where they can't cut it, show the government where it is, and collaboratively we cut it out to make businesses grow. So trade facilitation, the global digital portal has just been launched by JAMPRO under Senator Webby's watch. Shulette Cox and the rest of them, they've shown this to me, shown it to other people, and it's now being used by a lot of people around the world, and it's going to get better. We have to digitize and make sure people have access to Jamaica. Clearly, as I said, I work with the ministers and agencies of government to make sure we reduce the red tape and hassles that businesses have fairly, while making sure we keep government taxes coming in. We will work hard to ensure business play fair, as I said, to consumers. I led a trade mission to Guyana recently. It was amazing. We had 38 people, about 33 of them were private sector. It went amazingly well, so well. We've been invited back, so we're taking a bunch of contractors and financiers and other people in the middle of December, and I'm making it public now. Some contractors have contacted us already. Not just the big ones, medium-sized ones. There's a lot of work to be done in Guyana. They need training, so we're going to take people who train, you know who they are. So we're going to make sure we in the ministry do trade missions. It's amazing how government to government you can open doors. We can't do the business, but we open the doors so the businessmen get in. They might start on their own. Some of them have very good contacts. But believe me, it's very different when I go to Guyana and I can see the finance minister, the agriculture minister, and whoever else we need to see to make sure business start and they're willing to have us. So we're going to have more of those. That's how we're going to help. So, Mr. President, we know that the future has challenges. We're very clear of that. But as we help businesses and as they pay more taxes, which I think is a fitting tribute for the robust social, economic and enabling the government has been doing and will continue to do for Jamaican businesses to make sure that they're successful, so we're all successful. We know there are challenges, but we believe, Mr. President, that the future is promising. We can deal with the future. The Prime Minister has put together a team. He is a fantastic leader himself. He never stops working. He faces issues up front. He is not emotional. He is deliberative, and he makes decisions. You can't want much more from a leader. Mr. President, I put it to you that the state of this nation has been managed very well by the Andrew Holness administration. If it pleases you, Mr. President. Thank you.
I must admit, Mr. President, that I did not realize we were coming to a close. I was dug in and listening for the rest as well because I was so engaged.
You must ask for more.
So, well, I am asking for more. I am asking for more, Mr. President, if it is possible.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Senator Hill.
Mr. President, allow me to congratulate Minister Hill on an excellent presentation, which not only highlighted the caring side of the government, but the important imperatives regarding our growth, which is part of the cycle of ensuring that we are able to deliver the best to our people and that businesses can continue to employ persons in dignified and decent work that will allow them to take care of their families and for us to build strong communities and with that a stronger Jamaica. So,
can be exposed.
Mr. President, that being said, Mr. President, it is not intended to do any further business today. I therefore ask for the suspension of the State of the Nation debate and for the adjournment of the Senate for a date to be fixed.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, members. And just before I ask for the adjournment of the debate, I just to welcome the Permanent Secretary. They are still welcome anyway. Thank you very much, Senator Hill. The question is that the State of the Nation debate be...
Yes, Mr. President, sorry, craving your indulgence. Before you take the motion on adjournment, I understand Minister Samuda has a brief comment to make. So suspension, yes, but on the motion.
Thank you very much. The question is that the State of the Nation debate be suspended for a date to be fixed. Those in favour? Against? Senator Samuda.
Thank you, President, and indeed, thank you, Leader. Excellent presentation, Minister Hill, and it's unfortunate I have to say this at this time, but I think it's important that the records of the Senate reflect that this chamber extends its condolences and support to the Jamaica Constabulary Force. They have lost 2 members over the last 7 days. Constable Brian Martin, who was gunned down at a wake. A very somber time, obviously being at a wake, and now his family is without him. We also heard of last night Corporal Oliver Mullings, who was gunned down in an exchange of gunfire in Trenchtown as residents called for police support and police responded to deal with gunmen in the space. We know the difficulties of the job, but we understand and can imagine how the family, the friends, and indeed their co-workers and extended family in the JISTV are feeling. And I thought it's important to extend on behalf of the government, and I'm sure on behalf of the opposition, our deepest condolences and our deepest sympathies. And we would ask that it is recorded, Mr. President, that we extend our support. And we also say to the JCF that we stand behind you in this war against criminality, and you have our support. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Samuda. Senator Scott Motley.
Mr. President, I want to thank the Minister, my Senator colleague, for raising this matter. The opposition would like to join him in extending the condolences of the Senate. It's always very painful to hear about somebody losing their lives, but more so when a police officer dies during the course of serving and trying to protect others. I know what the family must go through when this happens. You always know that as an officer you are at risk, but you hope that day never comes to pass. And especially to die in a crossfire, that is really traumatic. We condemn criminality, and it is our hope that working together we can do something about it, Mr. President. So I join in this sad moment which has been expressed by the Minister.
Thanks to both Senator Scott Motley and Minister Samuda. I myself was taken aback when the age of the young man that was shot at the wake was revealed. It's extremely tragic. I think he was not even 20, just about 20. I asked the clerk to write appropriately to the Commissioner of Police and to the families of the police officers who were killed, one at a wake and the other in the line of duty. And perhaps it is appropriate to note that a policeman is always on duty. So even although he was at a wake for a member of his family apparently, his profession puts him on the line at all times. So condolences to both families. Thank you, members. Minister is not intended to do any further business today. So the question is that the Senate be adjourned for a date to be fixed. Those in favor? Against?